Hi again. Dwight Wilson, page 83 of his Armageddon Now. He's dealing with another speculation that was rife in the 1920s, which was with all of the concern with prophecy and how the Middle East, specifically Israel, Turkey, Russia, Germany, were all involved in the prophetic scenario as detailed by the prophets, specifically Daniel and Ezekiel. Where is America in Bible prophecy was a subject that came up repeatedly in the decades after World War I. Wilson says, with Armageddon so close at hand, Americans naturally wondered if the United States would be involved in the great conflagration. Since America had not been able to avoid involvement in World War I and had now taken an increasing role in international affairs, it did seem likely that such a momentous event would entangle the United States. Many who believed in the literalistic fulfillment of prophecy discovered symbols they could ascribe to the United States. The Evangel magazine reprinted a piece from the Jewish Missionary magazine entitled "The Shadow of Armageddon: Will America Take Part in the Conflict?" It proclaimed, quote, that the United States will be involved is plain from Ezekiel 38:13, where Britain is referred to under the figure of the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof. In that word all, we see the place of our land in prophecy, for no one can deny that Britain is the modern land of the lion symbol, or that our nation is a young lion of Britain. End of quote. A very high recommendation was given to a book by Reginald T. Nash, The Midnight Hour and After. Between 1920 and 1928, it went through 7 editions, totaling 50,000 copies. Nash's chapter on Armageddon explained that the merchants of Tarshish clearly stood for, quote, a great trading nation, unquote. Therefore, when we learn that this trading or shopkeeping nation has young lions belonging to her, we can hardly doubt but that Great Britain and her colonies are intended to be described. That's a direct quote also from Nash. Such leaps in reasoning from Tarshish to Britain and from lions to colonies were perhaps in keeping with a long tradition of apocalyptic speculation, but hardly in line with a commitment to literalism. A similar theme appeared in a sermon delivered at a Keswick conference, or Keswick conference, and reprinted in various publications, including Christ Life, The King's Business, and Moody Monthly. The question, does the United States appear in prophecy, is answered probably. The key passage is Isaiah 18, particularly the first 2 verses. Woe to the land shadowing with wings, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, that sendeth ambassadors by the sea, even in vessels of bulrushes upon the waters, saying, Go, ye swift messengers, to a nation scattered and peeled, to a people terrible from their beginning hitherto, a nation meted out and trodden down, whose land the rivers have spoiled. Discarding the standard view that the reference is to Egypt, and some commentaries would say Ethiopia, the author says that the wings denote the spread eagle, and since the United States is the only country which has an eagle with spread wings as its insignia, it must be the land in question. Besides, only very important countries send ambassadors by the sea. This would rule out Egypt. The author corroborates his thesis by pointing to the reference to young lions. That's again in Ezekiel 38, verse 13. And so it was that 10 years after the peace treaty, and 10 years before another war would burst forth, the Premillenarians faced a clear and present danger of war from which America could not escape. The lion and eagle were destined to stand with God and fight beasts and bear on behalf of God's chosen children. One 1929 article, The Spiritual Values of Armageddon, quite aptly summarized premillenarian concern over the momentous spiritual forces struggling in the universe. And here's a direct quote from that article. In an article in the Sunday School Times, May 7, 1927, the writer pointed out how the political situation in Palestine is shaping itself for that very struggle. Great Britain and the signatories of the League of Nations pledged to defend Palestine in case of invasion, while Russia and the newborn Asiatic League of Nations hang like a threatening war cloud on her northern horizon and turn envious eyes on the vast potential and actual wealth of that little land, which trusts in the protection of the hated merchants of Tarshish, or capitalistic nations. And again, reference is made to Ezekiel 38, 9-13. The article goes on, now suppose Russia should invade Palestine. This would be not merely a challenge to the order of things existing among the nations, but a challenge to God's purpose and order. It would provide a clean-cut test of Russia's national morality. Jehovah has promised Palestine to the seed of Abraham forever. And there Genesis 13 and 15 are referenced. The title lies in openly preserved documents for anyone to read. If Russia tried with eyes open to amend the covenant, would not this be a declaration of war against Jehovah, the most immoral act of which a nation could be guilty? And all the nations who abetted her would share in her guilt. And that's the end of the chapter. The 20s roar faintly, bear, beast, and young lions. The next chapter is entitled Balfour Betrayed. I'll put in a link to the quake that shook two Jehovah's Witnesses out of the watchtower. This is a series of videos about Zechariah 14, the first of which I'll put on the screen. And also add the Zechariah playlist, by the way, because Zechariah is one of the main books that shook us out of the watchtower. But chapter 14 is the main chapter in the mix. So I'll put that on screen. See you soon.